Today, we are going to make some grass. No, I'm not in Colorado, so it's not going to be that kind of grass. It's our techniques that are so simple and sensible, your miners will practically build themselves. Hello folks, it's Mad Dog Merv. Welcome to today's show. Today, well, we are going to do part one of our build of the... Oh, I've got the box upside down, so I can't show you very well. But hang on, we'll get this right here in a minute. We are going to do part one of the build of this. Ta-da! The EC-135C Looking Glass Airborne Command Post. This is a older AMT ERTL kit, and I picked mine up. Well, at the time this one was $55, but yeah, I've had a couple of these. It builds into a great aircraft. We're going to build this. I'm going to show you some of the difficulties in building this. This is the same as the KC-135A and E and all the other ones that they've got, the R that AMT ERTL put out. There are some issues with the fit that, you know, we'll go over, we'll look at. We'll do this together so you can kind of see if you pick one of these up out of some stash somewhere, because they haven't been re-released yet by anybody. It'd be nice if somebody would pick them up and do it. But anyway, we're going to take a look at it. This is step one. We're going to work on the fuselage. We're going to work on the interior. We're going to work on the engines today. And then we'll move on to wings and finally painting and decaling and such. So anyway, today we are just going to do the fuselage and the engines. Stick with us and let's check it out.
So today's story starts with a movie that came out in 1989. Now, about this time, I had the opportunity to go to Hill Air Force Base. I had a friend who was working at the SAC Alert facility, and I had an opportunity, although they had just kind of closed things down, to go and kind of take a private tour of the facility, as well as visit a B-52G that they had out on the tarmac. So that was a wonderful experience, a little bit creepy because all of this was so hush-hush and top secret for so many years. So anyway, this movie comes out in 1989, and it starred Rebecca De Mornay and Powers Booth and some other big-name stars, including James Earl Jones, who plays a general aboard the EC-135 Looking Glass. Goes by the call sign Alice. Kind of interesting, huh? Well, I had always wondered, because I had seen a model kit of this out in the early 90s by AMT ERTL. And this Looking Glass, I wanted to know more about it. So during the Cold War, the EC-135 was best known for being modified to perform this Looking Glass mission, where one EC-135 was always airborne, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, to serve as a flying command post for the Strategic Air Command in the event of a nuclear war. There were at least 11 of the EC-135C command post aircraft provided to SAC. There is still one of these aircraft at the U.S. Air Force Museum that you can see here, and it is a beauty. Anyway, these aircraft accumulated more than 281,000 accident-free flying hours. And on July 24th of 1990, the Looking Glass operations ceased their continuous airborne alert. But they remained on ground, or what they call airborne 24 hours a day alert, which meant anytime they needed them, they were ready to go. They're on the ground. They remained in that role until October 1st of 1998, when the Navy's E-6 Mercury Tacoma plane replaced that Looking Glass mission. And I've been fortunate enough to see one of those E-6 Mercuries at a local air show, and they are absolutely beautiful aircraft. Anyway, the C-135 series is definitely my favorite, more modern aircraft. And you can see, look at this pilot here. Wow, amazing takeoff.
Okay, so looking at the instructions here, and again, I've built several of the KC-135 and the variants, pretty much every variant that came out from AMT ERTL, except for that one with a really, really big front nose. Never did build that, but I'd love to get one of those. Anyway, pretty much all of these, all of the tankers, just all of them are like this, interior-wise. And it's great if you want to paint all that up and go through all that trouble, and then you put it together and you don't see any of it, except for those seats right there and the instrument cluster. So, because I'm going to do this gear up, I want to hang this from the ceiling. There's some things I don't need. So I don't need the this where the crew's going to come in. I don't need that. And I'm not going to have the big cargo door open, so I don't need all of this stuff here. Okay. Now, obviously we need the boom, but this area here, again, something you just really don't see. So I'm not going to bother with it, just the way it is. And then, of course, obviously we're going to need these because, well, I'm going to have my gear doors closed, but we do need this spar here. So, and this is helpful in getting the right shape of everything. Okay. So, again, I don't need the nose gear because I'm not going to have the gear down. And so we're going to get it to this point here, which we've already done. Okay, so I need to put my seats. I need to paint the seats and put them in after I paint my cockpit. But you can kind of see what we're going to be able to see, except for this is going to have, transparency over it. And part of the fuselage here. So, I mean, really, we're just not going to see a whole heck of a lot. I did include this much of the detail. So we're going to paint that. Now, let's take a look at this, putting this thing together. So, it's not easy. I'm just going to tell you that right now. I test fit it, and it fit like crap. They always do. So, I started with the tail. That was the one thing that seemed to fit pretty good. So I used my Tamiya ultra-thin cement, and I just, would hold this together and go down the seam. And I had a good starting point as of right there. Now, one problem area is right here, because you can see if I don't get this right, and if I have to do a lot of sanding, I'm going to obliterate these little ribs, and I need those ribs. So I'm either going to have to rebuild them or do something. So I did the best I could. I used some of my sprue goo, and it worked pretty well there, although I'm still going to need to fill in a little bit of the gaps and sand that with a very fine file. So I should be okay with the way that fit. As I went forward, of course, this thing just doesn't line up for the crap. So some of it lines up okay. Other parts of it are just high on one side and low on the other side. This is some Tamiya Putty that I used after I did an initial sanding. And you can still see, look at that high area on the one side. And there it fits pretty good. And then a high area on the other side and a bit of a gap. So as I put it together, I would use the ultra-thin cement, and just kind of hold things together, do a little section at a time, gluing. So I got most of the top done. Yay for me. I get to this point here, and this nose has got a huge gap. And you can see that right there is actually the gap. That's the gap I wound up with. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is going to be torturous. So I went down, and I guess I did put a little bit of glue here, but that seam popped. That's okay. We can repair that one. That won't be too bad. But you can see how, I mean, the fit's just atrocious on this kit. And it always has this hangover here. You can cut it or not. It's going to be covered with things, so it doesn't really matter. But this actually fit pretty well through here. Pretty smooth. Pretty smooth. And then I get up to this area, and same thing. One side's a little bit higher than the other, then it fits pretty good. One side's higher than the other. And I have quite a bit of work to do to try and glue it, put some glue, move it a little bit, and try and get it to fit as good as possible, because you can see there's a lot of detail that I'm going to have to rescribe once I sand that down. And then there's our wonderful nose area. Wow. I mean, you can imagine the gap I had there. You can kind of see that where I've had to fill that in. So I used sprue goo and would just hold this thing. I tried putting a clothespin, wouldn't work. I tried a clamp, you know, one of these types of clamps. The problem is, because the way this is designed, it would just slip right off. So ultimately it was glue it and hold it together like this for a while. Eventually your hand gets tired after 20 minutes or so. You got to let go and you think, okay, I'm doing okay. And that seam just creeps open. So I said, to heck with it. I'm going to have to live with it the way it is. And I then filled all of this with Tamiya Putty, as you can see. So now I'm going to have to go in and I'm going to have to do a little bit of sanding. So we're going to take a look at that. Sorry about the angle on this, folks. This is a tough angle to shoot. I mean, the sanding part isn't too bad. Some people would put this in right now. I will not. I'll put that in later because I want to do all this first. I know I'm going to screw that up real bad if I put it in right now. And it's going to be a bear because it's not going to fit. It's not going to fit properly. I can already tell you that. I did put these glass pieces in. Well, they're going to get sanded as well. But we're going to sand this eventually with about 1600 or 2000 grit. So we should be able to polish those up and make them look like they should. I'm trying to turn my fuselage back and forth a little bit as I sand to try and keep that little bit of a roundness. So you can see a little high here. That fits good. That fits good. This nose is going to take quite a bit of work. Let's go to the big side here. Yes, there's some things I'm going to have to rescribe, that's for sure. See how big that gap was? Now, if I hadn't used the sprue goo, I mean, I would have had to fill this with like plastic or something. The sprue goo worked out pretty good, so there was just a little bit of a indentation to fill with the putty. But anyway, yeah, you can see the fit. So I'm going to go and get all of this thing sanded down and ready and move on to the engines. Okay, real quick, I just wanted to show you. I just went over this one area here. So we'll stop about right there. And I went ahead and put some Mr. Surfacer on this so you can kind of, you know, see. I mean, obviously we've got a lot more sanding to do, but you can see, you know, how it's coming. Yeah, we've got a ways to go on some putty work. Wow, look at that. Hey, there's one spot that fits good. And you can see, yeah, my Mr. Surfacer is still wet, but that's actually not too bad looking. Got a little bit of work to do there, but that's turned out pretty good. And let's roll it over. And not too bad. So yeah, a little bit of light sanding, maybe some 220 in this area. Of course, we're going to have to put a little putty there. But yeah, we got definitely some high spots to knock down still. So there you go. Lot of work to get this thing to look right. If you just build it straight out of the box and slap it together, you're going to have a lot of gaps, and it's definitely going to look funky. Sorry. So you can see in the instructions how they go together. There's not a lot to them, but as you put them together, you'll see that there's a seam here that we're going to have to sand. That shouldn't be too bad. Now, I have not put the reversing sleeves on them yet. I'll make sure that I clean those up before I do. But you also notice there's a bit of a, not really a seam, but this will be easy enough to sand, and it should look fine. Of course, they're not perfectly round. So here's one I've already put the reversing sleeve on. And you can see the cleanup I'm going to have to do. Now, it didn't line up perfect. This here is going to require some sanding, so one side is higher than the other. I'll actually come back with some Tamiya ultra thin cement and try and even that out a little bit. See if I can pop that seam and make it a little bit better. But give you some idea of where we are with the engines. They shouldn't take more than, I don't know, these four. I'm thinking about an hour total to get them cleaned up and ready for the next step. So that's where we are, and join us for the next steps that we take, because I think we'll be doing wings and the wing roots and all that good stuff next, and those are going to be a bit tricky. So